So today we're going to be going over the basics of graphing yet again. We started our chapter with it and we're ending our chapter with it. This is basically the tie that connects everything that we've dealt with so far. We've dealt with ratio tables, we've dealt with ordering integers and graphing them, we've dealt with absolute value. So this is kind of what ties it all together. First of all, we know that the graph is organized into 4 sections. What are these 4 sections called? What are the 4 sections of the graph called? Who can tell me? Let's see, Fernando. Quadrants, yes. Now, Lucy, which quadrant is this one? That's our first quadrant, exactly. Then let's see, Hannah, what quadrant is this one? Quadrant 2. And as such, this one follows as quadrant 3, and this one follows as quadrant 4. It's a little bit weird. Because we are going counterclockwise. With this. However, it's still good to know. Now, in the first quadrant, is x positive or is x negative? Is x positive or negative? Elsie? Positive. And we know because we're on this half, we're going to the right on our line. We're going to the right. Additionally, y. What is y? Is that positive or negative? Is y positive or negative? Who can tell me? Lucy. In the first quadrant, what do you think, Nathan? Daniel. Positive. It is positive because we're going up. Notice that if I blocked in this section right here, I'd be blocking it going up and going to the right. So we're both positive here. Let's follow in this section. So our x is always this one, which is our horizontal one. So is our x value positive or negative in quadrant 2? Positive or negative, Michelle? Negative. But Ben, what about our y value? Is that positive or negative? Positive, exactly. Because here we're going to the left, but we're still going up. Exactly. As such, quadrant 3 is negative, and quadrant 4 is positive, negative. Now, if I wrote these in a different order, would they make sense if I wrote them? No. We have them called ordered pairs on purpose. If I went to quadrant 4 and just decided to write my negative y value and then my x value, that is in fact not correct. We can't do that. So we're going to come back to this graph. But first, I want you to, in your math notebooks, tell me what quadrant these upcoming numbers are going to be a part of. Tell me which quadrant these ordered pairs take part in. We're going to have a show of fingers to determine which quadrant we think each of them are in. Now, for the first one, 3, 8. What quadrant do we think it is? Hold up our number of fingers. It is indeed quadrant 1, because in quadrant 1, they are both positive. What about this next one? -2, -6. Which one do we think it's in? So I see some differing hands between 3 and 4. Let's check back. This is a negative, and this is a negative. If we look, it's 3. So we're in quadrant 3. What about the next one? -3, 4. -3, 4. Hold up your fingers. What do you think? So we only have 2 quadrants left. Let's pick a guess. And you are correct. It is quadrant 2. When our x is negative first, it's quadrant 2. And then as such, this last one is quadrant 4. Exactly, quadrant 4. If I forget, I like to literally just make a little chart where I'll go 1, positive, 2, negative, 3, negative, and 4, positive. So I make myself a quick little chart just because it can be very helpful just to see that. Now, we spent earlier in our lesson working with what looked like number lines because they technically were, but it was just showing us how we graph on a normal line. If this is 0 and this is 5, what number do we think that might be? What do we think, Michelle? Yeah, -5 totally works. Once again, we just came up with that because of how the spacing looks, and it makes sense. -5. our negatives go to the left. Our negatives go to the left. Now, what happens if I added on another line, just like our coordinate plane normally has, if I'm doing it terribly? But so now, if I said this point and this point, what might this point be right here? What is the value of this point? Who can tell me a good value for that point that we have, Miles? 5, yes. How'd you know it was going to be 5? How'd you know it was going to be positive 5?
Because it was like the same length.
Yeah, it's the same length, but you knew it was positive because?
Oh, because it was the one time.
Because we're going up, right? We go up. So as such, what is this point that we're going down going to be? What's that going to be, Lucy? Negative 5. Excellent. So we go around here and we do our graphic. This is how we graph. So somebody, anybody, doesn't matter. Give me a point that falls in this first quadrant. Give me any point that falls in this first quadrant. Rocco, that is a number. Yeah, give me an ordered pair. You're right, I did say point. Give me an ordered pair. Elsie. 3, 5. That falls in there. 3, 5. We're totally good. That falls there. What about one here? What would be a number that, ordered pair that fell in there? Yes, Hannah?
-2, 5.
Yeah, -2, 5 totally works. What about here? What would fall there? Who can tell me? Yes, Anita. -4, -6 totally works. And what about here? Would have been on our last one. Who can tell me? Anita. 5, -3, exactly. We always just go in that same order. We know we have our ordered pairs, we have our coordinates, we have all of that. So what I would like you to do, is open to page 404. Trust me, it will be found. And I want you to graph A, B, C, and D. A, B, C, and D. So let's look at this first point. Our first point is letter P, and it's -2, 4. -2, 4. Which quadrant does that go in, Hannah?
No, the TV is.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Shh. So for this next point, let's look at point Q. At point Q, I'm going to put 2 different dots, and you're going to tell me which dot is the correct dot. You're going to tell me which dot is the correct dot. So, is it our red dot, or is it our green dot? Is it our red dot, or is it our green dot for point Q? Hannah. So, what do we think? Thumbs up if we think it's the red dot. Anybody? Okay, so does anybody think it's the green dot? We're not getting that many answers here. And it's been pointed out that it should be 0, -4, which also changes everything. See, look at that's observant students who are noticing. So, do we think that our dot point, let's see, I'm going to put 4 dot colors, and you're going to tell me which one it is. I'm going to put 4 dot colors, and you're going to tell me which one it is. That one didn't look so good. I'm putting 4 dot colors. Okay. So one of these dots is letter Q, 0, -4. One of them is that dot. So which one is that? Which one is that, Michelle? The purple one. Who agrees? Thumbs up if you agree. Yes, because we went 0 here and then -4. It helps when I have the right numbers on the board, doesn't it? Yes, exactly. Now, as such, sometimes you'll be asked to graph something that isn't a full point, but we can just use our intuition. Let's think about R. Let's think about point R. So point R, we have -1/2. Where would -1/2 go? -1/2. Is it going to go in the first hop or in the second hop? Like, is it going to go there? Is it going to go in our first hop, second hop? Where is it going to go? Like, who can tell me? Left, right, wherever. Who can give me any inclination? Elsie, Where do you think it's going to go?
It's going to be on the left side and in quadrant 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's
Yep. Continue. Yes, so since it's negative 1/2, we're between 0 and 1. We're between 0 and 1. So we would start there. Same thing with negative 2.5. We go down to negative 1, negative 2.5. So our point would convene, and we would actually have our point right there. And that's how we graph. You don't necessarily need to graph exactly on an axis. The last quick thing that we're going to go over before you guys can start your homework is this. So, remember when we talked about reflecting about the axis and how it's a little bit weird? We talked about reflecting about the axis. So, let's say I have this point here. This point is 5, 4. I want to reflect it about the x-axis, which means I'm rotating this axis. I'm rotating around that axis. Do you see how that makes sense? It's like if you were spinning the whole graph, we were rotating it. Now, what point doesn't change? What point doesn't change when we rotate it about the x? Lucy? The 5. Our x value stays the same. It's our y value that flips and turns opposite. Yes, Lucy? Yeah, go ahead. Yes, so our flipped point is 5, negative 4. Exactly. That's when we flip it about the x. The x's stay the same. So now, let's say I'm going to be flipping it about the y-axis. I'm flipping it about the y-axis. What point is going to stay the same as our original point right here? What number is going to stay the same? What number, Anita? The 4, because that's our y number. Our 4, so we stay on the 4. What number is changing? What number is changing? Let's see, Fernando. The 5, and what does it become? Negative 5, so we end up right here. Exactly. When we flip about the y, our y stays the same. When we flip about the y stays the same. When we flip about the x stays the same. Excellent. I want you guys to go to page 406. You can start the guided practice. And your homework is page 407, 408. With the recording ending at 8:31 a.m., now is the time that my students should be asking me for homework help. This can go for graphing. This can go for anything that we've gone over so far in Chapter 5. Okay, perfect.